I am 87 years old, and last winter somebody young asked me how I was still here after everything, and I did not have an answer for him. So I went home and I counted. 7 things. 7 things I have done, most days, for a long time, without ever once deciding to do them. I wrote them on the inside cover of a seed catalog, and when the list was done, I was not proud of it, and I was not ashamed of it. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years, because I do not know if these 7 are why I am still here. I only know they are what I was doing. Come sit closer to the fire. I do not want to say this next part across a room. I am not going to tell you how to survive losing people. I would not know how. I am not going to promise you that these 7 will do for you what they may or may not have done for me. And I am not going to stand here at 87 and pretend that outliving nearly everybody was some kind of accomplishment. It was not. It was mostly just what happened. What I can do is tell you the truth about the 7, which is that not one of them is brave, not one of them was chosen, and every single one of them is small. If you came for something bigger than that, I have not got it. My grandmother, who they called Grandmother Weaver, said, "The river does not remember the stone, but it goes around it every day just the same." She said that to me at a crossing on the low end of our place when I was maybe 9. There was a rock out in the middle of that water, and the current had worn a shape around it, and she made me stand there until I saw that the water was not fighting the rock. It had simply organized itself around the thing that would not move. My grandfather set the other half of it down beside her, years later, in a cold barn. He said a man does not hold himself up. He gets held up by whatever he has not put down yet. Her sentence and his sentence hold up every word I am about to say to you. The first confession is that I kept one chore fixed to an hour, and I never let it move. Water at first light, not because the animals would have died an hour later. They would not have. Because it had to happen, and it had to happen then, and on the mornings when nothing else in me was working, that one thing still had a time attached to it. There were whole years where that was the only appointment I kept. I want to be careful here, because it sounds like discipline and it was not. Discipline is a thing you decide. This was a thing that had already been decided for 40 years before the bad mornings came, and it just went on being true after. I was the stone. The water went around me. That is all. Before I give you the second one, let me say a small thing and then leave it be. I put 20 of these teachings, the ones that came down to me and the ones I worked out too late, into a small book called The Native Way. It is linked below, and it sits in the first comment. Read one and sit with it overnight. That is all it asks of anybody. No pressure at all. It is there if your heart wants it, and if it does not want it, then stay here by this fire and we will carry straight on without it. That is the whole of the asking, and I will not bring it up again. Now, the second confession, which is the one I would have denied to your face for about 50 years. The second confession is that I let exactly one person watch me be no good at something. Samuel. The neighbor's boy who is 61 years old now, and still the neighbor's boy to me. The winter after I lost my wife, I could not get green wood to split, could not do it. My hands were fine, my back was fine, and I stood out there for an hour and could not make the maul do what it had done 10,000 times. Samuel came over the fence and did not say a word about it, and did not take the maul off me either. He just sat on the block and stayed there while I failed at it, and then a while longer while I got it. Grandmother Weaver said green wood has to be split in front of somebody, or it never gets split at all. She was talking about wood. She was not only talking about wood. I never asked him to come. I never thanked him for it properly. And I have thought since that if he had not sat on that block, I might have quit doing things in front of people entirely. And that is a door that does not open again easily once it shuts. The third confession is that I stopped arguing with the dead and started telling them things instead. For a good few years, everybody I had lost lived in my head as an argument. All the sentences I did not get to say, all the ones I said badly. I would be halfway through feeding the stove and be in the middle of a fight with somebody who had been gone 11 years. And then somewhere it changed. And I do not know the day it changed. I started telling them things instead, the price of hay, that the North Field flooded again, that Samuel's granddaughter had a boy. I want to be plain about what I mean, because I am not making any claim about where anybody is or what they hear. This is memory, and it is habit. That is all I am telling you it is. But the arguing wore me down to the bone, and the telling does not. My grandfather said a path can change its direction without getting one step shorter. Do I still lose that one sometimes? I do. Some nights I am right back in the argument, saying the good sentence I should have said in 1971 to a man who has been in the ground longer than he was ever in my life. And I have stopped treating that as a slip. It just means the old path is still there under the grass, the way old paths are. The fourth confession is that I always kept something alive that could not manage without me. An old mare for a long while, well past the point where she was any use to anybody. Then barn cats. Then more barn cats than a sensible man would keep. There is nothing noble in this, and I want you to hear that. On the mornings I did not much care whether I got up. Something outside was hungry, and hungry does not care how you feel about it. Grandmother Weaver said a spring only stays open as long as something keeps drinking from it. She said a spring nobody visits will silt itself shut in a season, and it will not have done anything wrong. It will just have stopped being used. The fifth confession is that I started saying the names out loud instead of talking around them. This one I did notice. People do not say the names. They say your wife or your boy or that time. They step around it the way you step around a hole in a floor, and they think they are being kind, and mostly they are. But my house got very quiet of names for a few years, and then one day I said my wife's name out loud to a woman selling eggs for no reason, in the middle of a sentence about eggs, and the sky did not fall in. It was like taking a stone out of your pocket and setting it on the windowsill. It weighs exactly the same, but it is somewhere you can look at it, and you are not carrying it anymore. And here is what I did not expect. Other people started saying the names back. Not right away, and not everybody. But it turned out most of them had been holding those names too and waiting to see whether they were allowed. Grandmother Weaver would have said something about that, and I think what she would have said is that a name is not a wound. A name is the only part of a person that is still yours to say. The sixth confession is that I let a stranger do me a kindness and did not square it the same week. A man I did not know plowed my lane out after a storm the year I turned 80. I went to pay him and he would not have it, and I was angry about it for 2 days. 2 days. Over a plowed lane. Because I had spent my whole life being the one who did the plowing, and being on the other end of it felt like a debt with no bottom to it. Grandmother Weaver said a field left fallow one season is not a field that has given up. It is a field that has agreed to take something for a change. I still do not like it, but I have stopped calling it weakness, and I have stopped racing to pay everybody back by Friday, and that has made me easier to be around, which matters more than I understood. The seventh confession is the one that took everything else 80 years to get to. I gave up the idea that grief is a thing you finish. I spent a long time waiting to be done, waiting to come out the other side of it, the way you come out of a winter. And every time it came back around, I took it as evidence that I had failed at something, that other people managed this and I was doing it wrong. Grief is not a season, it is weather. It comes through, and it goes off, and it comes back, and none of that means you have made a mistake. You do not finish weather. You just get better at being outside in it. My grandfather said only a fool argues with the sky. The day I quit waiting to be finished, most of the tiredness went out of it. Not the grief. the tiredness of failing at the grief. Do you know how much of it was that? More than half. I would not have believed that if somebody had told me at 60. I would have said the weight was the weight. But a good part of what I was carrying was not the loss at all. It was the running total of how badly I thought I was handling the loss. And that is a thing a man adds to entirely on his own. So there they are. 7. And I will say again what I said at the start, because it is the only honest thing I have. I do not know that these are why I am still here. I know they are what I was doing while I was. Now I want to be careful, because I know how a list like this can land on somebody who is in the middle of it. Counting these 7 did not mean I decided I had grieved well, or that I had it figured out, or that I am owed anything for still being upright. It is not the same as hating myself, and it is not the same as congratulating myself either. It is just an accounting. And every one of the 7 is a thing I did, not a thing I am. That is the distinction I want to hand you, and I want to be exact about it, because I had it backwards for years. I used to think there were people built to survive things, and people who were not, and that you found out which one you were when it came for you. I do not believe that anymore. I think there are people who happen to still have one chore with a time attached to it, and one person who will sit on a block while they fail at something, and one animal that gets hungry at 6. That is not character. That is scaffolding, and scaffolding can be put back up, which is the only part of this I would push on anybody. If you are in it right now, do not go looking for the strength. I never found any. Go and find one thing with a time attached to it, and one creature that gets hungry, and one person you will let watch you be bad at something. Those you can actually get hold of. I am not going to tell you I am at peace. I am not sure I would trust an old man who said that. What I will tell you is that the 7 are still there, most days, mostly unchosen, and the mornings come around, and I get up and do the water at first light. Let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl. One chore fixed to an hour. One person who watched me be no good at something, telling the dead things instead of arguing with them. Something alive that could not manage without me. The names said out loud. A kindness taken and not squared, and giving up on grief being a thing you finish. Now turn it around and answer these to yourself. Nobody else needs to hear it. What is the one thing in your day that still has a time attached to it, whether you care or not? Who is the one person who has seen you be no good at something and stayed anyway? Whose name have you stopped saying out loud, and who taught you to step around it? And what have you been waiting to be finished with, that maybe was never a season at all? And I know some of you are asking the thing I asked with that seed catalog open in front of me. Is it too late for me? I will not promise you anything. I am 87, and I have no business promising anybody a result. And anyone my age who does is selling you something. What I will tell you is what all these years actually left me with. Not strength, not wisdom, whatever that is. It left me the ability to notice one thing and to make one choice about it. That is the whole inheritance. One chore with a time on it. One name said out loud to a woman selling eggs. That is the size we are talking about, and it turned out to be enough to be still sitting here talking to you. So tell me which number was yours. Of the 7, which one landed in your chest and stayed there? Was it the chore with a time on it, or the one person who watched you fail, or the telling instead of the arguing, or the thing that needs feeding, or the name you have stopped saying, or the kindness you could not take, or the grief you have been waiting to finish? Tell me which number down in the comments, and tell me a little about it if you want to, because I do read every one of them. And then come back and sit with me again tomorrow. There will be a fire and a chair turned toward it, and I will keep it warm for you.